Test, test. Okay. Thank y'all for being here today. This should be our last meeting of the Mobile Sports Betting Task Force. The last two meetings I feel have been very productive. We've got some good information, and I just want to thank the task force members for all your hard work. I know there's been a lot of conversation outside of these meetings and a lot of work from the members and their companies. I know today that we're all not aligned and agree 100% on a position. So today we'll have two speakers, one that didn't get to speak at the other meeting, and then we'll hear from the peer committee on the report that they have so far to update us. As I've said earlier, I plan on introducing legislation this year. My number one goal is to protect bricks and mortar. I've said that from the beginning. This bill will not have anything to do with iGaming. With that being said, as we get into the end of the agenda, the roundtable discussion, that's what I want the members to talk about. Knowing that I'm going to have a bill, you might not agree with the bill, but I still want your input, and let's talk about what the bill should look like and what you can live with and what could be best for the state of Mississippi at the same time of protecting bricks and mortar. So once again, thank y'all for being here today, and I'll turn it over to Senator Blunt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My priorities are the same as Casey's, to protect the tens of thousands of jobs, direct and indirect, that are associated with what has been a successful industry in Mississippi. I think this task force has been helpful. There's more time to talk and work through things in a task force than we have in the legislative session. And it forces people to talk to each other, even if they have differences, and that's what we've tried to do here. I don't know what bills we may see in the Senate. Certainly any senator can file any bill. Also, both on the House and Senate side, we don't know what the committees will look like. We'll have a new speaker. Lieutenant Governor will make his appointments. But whoever is sitting in these chairs in January, I think that there's been a lot of productive work here for any senator or anybody who wants an understanding of this issue to look at. And that the peer report, which we hope to have ready by December 15th, will include all that. I don't think it will make any specific recommendations or endorse any particular legislation or policy. It's going to present a lot of the findings here, and then anybody who wants to use that for legislation has that as a basis. If you are a member of the task force and you would like to submit a brief letter or brief facts or charts, again, brief, but if you would like to submit those for inclusion in the peer report, please get those to me and Chairman Uri by the end of this week, and they will be added as an appendix, and you can say whatever it is you feel that you need to say for purposes of that report. But please get those in this week. We want to try to make that deadline of December 15th. So with that being said, thank you all for coming, and I'll turn it back over to Chairman Uri. I guess I can go ahead and recognize Chris Hopwood. Chris, are you here? From the Mississippi Band of Choctaw Indians. Chris, yes, sir, if you can go to the end of the table, please. And please, for Chris and for the members of the committee, I've never chaired a meeting in here in this room before. The acoustics are a little challenging, but we also have people who are watching online. Please use the microphone so they can hear your comments. All right, Chris, you're recognized. Please tell us what you think we need to hear.
All right, good afternoon, honorable members of the committee. My name is Chris Hopwood. I am the director of the sportsbook operations at Choctaw Resort Development Enterprises, which includes Pearl River Resort in Choctaw, Mississippi, Oklahoma Casino in Sandersville, Mississippi. I apologize for not being here at the previous meeting due to an illness, but as you know, I submitted a written copy of my testimony in consideration. Today I'm here in person to reiterate my main points and to answer any questions you may have before I get to any remarks. I do want to share a little bit about myself. I have been working in the sports betting industry for over 20 years. 17 of those were in Las Vegas and now here in Mississippi. I have worked closely with the state legislators across various regions where tribal gaming thrives. I also have the honor of running the first sports book in Mississippi that was run by tribal gaming. Additionally, I have been a consultant and a speaker for many tribes and operators from across the country who are interested in developing their own sports betting operations. I am here to urge you to support the existing sports betting operations in Mississippi and to reject the proposals for allowing mobile statewide sports betting to enter our market. This proposal would harm Choctaw Gaming, which is not only good for the Choctaw tribe, but also for the entire state of Mississippi. Choctaw Gaming is a major employer, a generous donor, and a loyal partner to our local communities. Choctaw Gaming is also a leader and an innovator in the sports betting field, offering a unique and independent approach that benefits our customers in our state. Let me share a few economic impacts for our tribe. We operate 3 casinos: Silver Star Casino, Golden Moon Casino, and Bocoma Casino. We are soon to unveil a new sports book in Bocoma Casino and are currently under construction for a sports book in Louisville, Mississippi. Also, I've heard some mention before that we have reservation-wide sports betting, but that is a misconception. We only offer in-premise betting just like it does for the state of Mississippi. We support 2,300 jobs with a payroll of over $56 million annually. We spend $49.5 million every year on purchasing goods and services from local vendors. We donate money and supplies to local communities, including the police department, schools, and charities. And we boost the surrounding economies by attracting visitors and increasing sales tax revenue. These numbers show that we are a vital part of Mississippi's economy and community. That is why we are concerned about the threat of mobile statewide betting. The threat comes from the corporate giants with DraftKings and FanDuel who want to dominate the market and take away our customers and our revenue. These corporations do not have Mississippi's best interests at heart. They only care about their own profits, and they do not have a connection with the people. They only care about their platforms. They do not have respect for our culture and about our land. Let me explain to you why mobile statewide sports betting is bad for Mississippi. It causes revenue leakage. Most of the money that the customers spend on the mobile sports betting will leave our state, except for a small portion of the taxes. This means less money for our local businesses and our communities and our local causes. For example, the way Arkansas bill is worded prevents revenue leakage. It requires 51% of the mobile sports betting revenue to stay at the casino. They did what they had to do to protect their bricks and mortar casino operations. This is why the big 3 corporations are not operating in Arkansas. I do not want to point out that the sportsbook operators in Arkansas, I do want to point out the sportsbook operator in Arkansas who shared the concept of this with his team is a former colleague of mine, and this was an idea that I discussed with other tribes across the country on how to protect their sports betting operations for their casinos. If Mississippi does decide to go with this route, I think that percentage probably should be higher to protect the brick and mortar. Okay, it creates a corporate disconnect. These corporations do not want to have physical ties to locations. They prefer to operate online without any accountability or responsibility. This means less interactions with our customers, less support for our partners, and less respect for our values. Looking at Tennessee example, there are no jobs in the state of Tennessee for sports betting. The state is geo-fenced to allow statewide mobile sports betting. With this approach, everything but the taxes leave the state. And also, the next point, these corporations also outsource their risk management and their betting lines to distant hubs, either in Las Vegas, New Jersey, or Europe. This means there's less opportunities for workers, less training for our staffs, and less skills for our state. When I came to Mississippi to start the sportsbook operations, we did not want to bring a team from Las Vegas. We at CRDE wanted to find a team of Mississippi residents, train them, teach them how to run the sportsbook, and then let them have the higher paying jobs. I've always said, I get in trouble when I say this, but I always say that the sports betting industry right now kind of is a copy and paste industry. It's been doing that since 2008, when I was in Las Vegas. So there's no local preference to what's going on here. So when your casinos, if you have a third party running the casino, it kind of has a challenge for your actual sports book when they don't have the full profit revenue share they're trying to get from the casino. One of the points that has been brought up about mobile sports betting is that it gives the customers the opportunity to price shop, but the fact is, if every sportsbook has the same betting line, there is no price shopping. It is just about how much free play can be given away to raise customer acquisition costs so the smaller operators cannot compete. In contrast, let me explain to you why our independent sportsbook is good for Mississippi. It will retain revenue locally. All of the money their customers spend on our sportsbook is recycled into the community. This means more money for our local businesses, our communities, and local causes. It creates a local connection. We have a strong relationship with our customers, our partners, and our values. We operate on-site with full accountability and responsibility. This means more interactions with our customers, more support for our partners, and more respect for our values. We create jobs. We handle our own risk management and our own betting lines. We train Mississippi residents to operate our sportsbook, equipping them with new skills, creating higher-paying jobs with our community. This means more opportunities for our workers, more training for our staff, and more skills for our state. We'd like to embrace the local approach. We care about our local preferences and the local influences of our customers. We adjust our betting lines based on our promotions to suit the needs and tastes of our market, taking into account the differences and the nuances. That this means more diversity for our market, more choice for our customer, and more identity for our state. As you can see, our independent sportsbook is not only a source of pride for us, but is also a source of benefit for you. We are not asking for anything special. We are asking for something fair. Do not leave these third-party vendors pull the wool over your eyes. The way they set up their taxation schemes does not result in the real revenue going to the state. It all enriches their pockets. Not only does it not allow Choctaw to compete, but it also hurts real people on the ground. We have a long-standing track record at Choctaw of not just providing jobs and revenue of the tribal government, but we also provide jobs and infrastructure opportunities for average Mississippians. Again, not only is it important to support our efforts to keep Mississippi dollars in Mississippi, but the integrity of gaming is critical. This is true inflection point of our state, and our hope is that you will support the existing sports betting operations in Mississippi and oppose attempts to expand mobile statewide sports betting. However, if the decision is made to allow mobile sports betting, how will this include Choctaw sports betting operations? Thank you for your time and attention, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from members of the task force for Mr. Hopwood? If there are no questions from Mr. Hopwood, we're going to move to Matthew. Thank you, Mr. Hopwood. Appreciate you coming. We're going to move now to Matthew Holmes from the Legislative Peer Committee to brief the task force on what they've researched thus far. And we'll recognize any member after his presentation for questions. Mr. Holmes, thank you for coming. Thank you, Mr. Edgar and everybody at Peer. We appreciate y'all, and we're glad to have you. Mr. Holmes, you're recognized.
All right, just wanted to provide an update on the work that we've been doing for the Mobile Online Sports Betting Task Force. This is not a traditional peer report. This is a peer report that legislation asked us to do for the task force, and peer takes no position one way or the other. Looking at the national sports betting market, 34 states plus DC have adopted sports betting since 2018. The amounts bet on sports betting, revenue, and taxes have increased each year since 2019, from $9 million in bet to $102 million in handle. Revenues have increased from $604 million to $9.6 billion, and taxes collected have increased from 77. Which button do I push? There we go. And revenues collected, our taxes collected have increased from 77 million to 1.8 billion. Those numbers are expected to increase through at least 2027 as new states enter the market. New FY 2024 entrants include Kentucky, Vermont, and Maine. Other major states expected to enter the market, that have not yet entered the market, include California, Texas, and Florida, as well as fellow southern states, Alabama and Georgia. Online bets account for about 80% of all sports bets nationwide. That could be up to 90% in some locations. Maryland, regulators reported recently that that's 95% in the state of Maryland, where they have 12 physical locations and 12 mobile apps for sports betting. According to Allers and Krejcik, 4 sportsbook operators control about 89% 9.7% of the sports betting market as of February 2023. Two of those, FanDuel and DraftKings, control about 70+% of the market, while BetMGM and Caesars control just over 18% of the market. New market entrants expected into the market include ESPN Bet, which just launched November 14th in 17 states, as well as Fanatics, which recently acquired PointsBet. While this task force isn't dealing with online gaming specifically, online gaming is a new market that is expected to grow as well. It's now legal in 7 states, with Rhode Island being the most recent adopter. As of August 23, DraftKings and FanDuel control about 61% of the market. Maryland.
Let me interrupt you, and no one else is allowed to interrupt. But I want to be clear about this. Growth of online gaming. Are we talking about online gaming, or are we talking about online mobile sports betting?
Online casino gaming, slots, tables, those types of things.
Okay.
And as I said, this isn't necessarily a part of the task force. It's just growing while sports betting is also growing.
That's fine. That's helpful. Thank you.
Okay. And Maryland, just similar to our report, Maryland required that their state do a report on mobile online gaming, and that was just released this month. Mississippi has 26 commercially operated casinos owned by 16 different ownership groups. Penn owns 5 in Mississippi, while Caesars owns 4. 3 offer mobile sports betting while on property, while 5 have kiosk only. Throughout the state, I was surprised to learn that there were 367 kiosks for mobile sports betting, as reported by the Mississippi Gaming Commission. There are also, as Mississippi Gaming it's just reported, 3 additional tribal-owned casinos, 2 of which have sports betting, and 1 is about to add sports betting. In terms of sports betting, we utilize the same gaming tax as established in Mississippi Code Annotated Section 7576-177, which is an 8% gaming tax on revenues above $134,000 each month. Mississippi Code Annotated Section 7576-129-3 directs sports betting tax revenue to the state highway fund that was part of the lottery bill, and that would expire June 30th, 2028. There's also a 3 to 4% local option tax that localities can adopt. In terms of startup investment, we did survey each of the 26 casinos, and all 26 casino operators have responded, just to try to determine what the investment cost is for our casinos, how many people are employed related to sportsbook operations. In terms of investment costs, they combined reported $28.4 million, with the amount ranging from $5,000 to more than $1 million on the high end. Sportsbook rated employment for the 21 that do employ sportsbook related employees, 109.7 full-time employees, 36 part-time employees, with combined wages and benefits of $5.4 million. 5 casinos reported 0 dedicated sportsbook employees. Annual operating costs were approximately $24.5 million, and that ranged from about $5,000 to $12,000 on the low end to more than $5 million on the high end. We did exclude 2 casinos, and that was because their costs reported were significantly higher than the 3rd highest casino, and so that skewed the figures. When we asked for them to follow up, they had not responded as to why their costs were significantly higher. We also asked, does the sports book track ancillary revenue related to sports betting? Only 3 do. 2 for food and beverage only, with those amounts ranging from $1.3 million to $1.6 million, while 1 only tracked it for rated sports bettors only. And then also, is the sportsbook able to track where its sports betting patrons come from? 18 respondents responded. 5 reported that they could, and with the reporting capability varying, while 13 reported that they could not track where they come from. 3 could, but only for players who use a player's card, while 1 reported implementing such capability. In terms of Mississippi Sportsbook revenues for FY19 to FY 2023, 2021 was the peak month with about $5.2 million distributed to the Highway Fund and $62 million in ghost revenue. We've seemed to have about leveled out at that point. It could keep growing, but that's where it's been since 2021 and has stayed at that point. In terms of factors impacting revenue potential, factors that would impact how much revenue Mississippi receives from legalizing mobile online sports betting include the established tax rate. Do we keep the same tax rate that we currently have? Do we have a different tax rate for mobile versus online sports betting? In-person versus online registration. Nevada is a state that requires in-person registration, and that can slow the upkeep to online sports betting. Cannibalization of existing sports betting market, does that draw away from our current casino sports betting market and the economic impact there? Entrance of new sports bettors into the Mississippi market would be those not currently betting, those betting online in neighboring states such as Louisiana and Tennessee, and the extent of the illegal betting market moving to the legal market, and then also future potential legalization in Alabama and Florida. We also looked at sports betting tax revenue by fiscal year in select states. New York's the biggest state so far in sports betting. We are also asked to look at New Jersey and Nevada as comparable states. Arkansas, Louisiana, and Tennessee are contiguous states, as well as Iowa and Indiana were states picked up here. Each of these states have had increases in revenue year over year. Nevada's are generally have less of an increase year over year, and that's in part because of how you can utilize mobile sports betting. New York was slower on the uptick to adopt mobile online sports betting, and so that's partly why their numbers were slower to take off. Arkansas also was slower on the uptick to adopt mobile online sports betting. So we look at each individual state. In 2018, Arkansas, through constitutional amendment, to retail sports wagering at 4 locations, a horse track, a greyhound track, and 2 proposed casinos. One of those casinos has not been built yet, and that's partly subject to litigation. Arkansas has a tax rate of 13% for the first $150 million in revenue and 20% above $150 million. As of October, for the first year, October 2020 to September 2021, they generated about $1.26 million in taxes, or an average of $105,000 per month, and that's for retail sports wagering. In February 2022, they adopted online sports betting, and as Mr. Hopwood mentioned, 51%, they have a requirement that 51% of the revenue sharing rule, requiring Arkansas casinos to retain 51% of online betting profits. And that has deterred some of the major providers from entering the market. From August 2022 to July 2023, $4.4 million in taxes with an average of $373,000 per month. So that's an increase of about 3.5 times from what they were doing under retail sports betting. Just recently, they've reported $300 million wagered through the first 10 months of 2023, compared to $184 million wagered in all of 2022. In terms of Louisiana, they're another state with a prior history of casinos similar to Mississippi, as well as roadside gaming. They adopted retail-only wagering in 2021 and had it as only retail-only sports wagering from October through December 2021, with $1.5 million in taxes, or an average of $500,000 per month. In January 2022, they launched online sports betting, and for the 12-month period, August 22 to July 2023, they generated $38.6 million in taxes, or an average of $3.2 million per month. That's about a 6 times increase from what it was when they had it under retail-only wagering. But again, they only had it for 3 months before they launched online sports betting. Louisiana is an example of a state that has different tax rates for retail and online sports wagering. They have 10% for retail sports wagering and 15% for online sports wagering. Louisiana also charges higher application fees, licensing fees, and renewal fees for online sports betting versus retail sports betting. Tennessee legalized mobile online sports betting in 2020. Tennessee had no casinos and also prohibits retail sports betting. Their tax rate was 20% on revenue through June 2023, and they recently changed that to 1.85% on the total amount bet or wagered beginning July 2023. At that time, they stopped reporting figures publicly for the amount bet, and so we haven't been able to do a comparison, at least as of yet. Their revenues, at least so far, have increased for the first year about $3 million per month, average in tax revenues to about $3.8 million per month in fiscal 2022 to about $6.4 million per month in fiscal 2023. Looking at New Jersey, they were the first state that sort of led the push to legalize retail and online sports betting, and retail and online sports betting became legal in 2018. They are the second largest sports betting market after New York. They have access to 17 sports betting apps in their state, at least based on recent reports we saw. 5 online providers have left the market, New Jersey market, since 2022. Under New Jersey law, only licensed casinos and racetrack properties can apply for a sports betting license. Online sportsbook operators must partner with a licensed casino or racetrack to be in order to have a mobile app. Somebody, I believe it's either Bally's or Boyd's, in a past task force meeting mentioned skins. Here, New Jersey permits license holders to have 3 online partners each, and in this case, it would be referred to skins. They have different tax rates as well for retail and online, with a 9.75% for retail and a 14.25% tax rate for online sports betting. Nevada requires casino operators, or permits casino operators to apply for a sports pool license, with the license being in addition to the non-restricted gaming license, which must be attained prior to applying to operate a sports pool. Nevada permits online betting, but requires the person to initially register and to make their initial deposit in person. This in-person registration requirement has deterred, or is said to have deterred, FanDuel, DraftKings, and ESPN Bet and other major entrants from entering the Nevada market. They charge one of the lowest tax rates, 6.75% on gross revenue exceeding $134,000. Revenues there have increased incrementally, but at a slower rate compared to other states. They do have one of the pretty sizable gaming market at first. Mobile sports wagering counts for a lower percentage there, accounting for 65%, or almost $3.2 billion of the state's total sports wagers. Looking at Indiana, as of September 2019, they legalized retail and mobile sports betting. They permit sports betting at the state's 11 casinos, 2 racinos, and multiple off-track betting parlors. They have licensed operators can offer online and mobile wagering, with mobile sportsbook operators must partner with land-based properties to offer mobile online sports betting. There they charge a tax rate of 9.5%. Tax revenue has increased from $7.5 million in FY 2020 to $39.6 million in FY 2023. We're one of the states who did a report prior to approving mobilized sports betting. They had contracted out to do a report in 2018, and at the time they had projections to do sort of gradually increase their online sports betting revenue from about $90 million to about $250 million. So far, they're averaging about $250 million per year. They're reaching its peak as neighboring states, Ohio and Kentucky, come online, so they are likely not going to keep increasing too much more as these additional states come online. They have 13 sports books. They are down from 16. ScoreBet, MaximBet, and WinBet have shut down since initially beginning operations. And finally, Iowa, they legalized retail and mobile sports betting in 2019. Iowa's 19 casinos and racinos may apply for sports wagering license. They have 17 active sports books, with at least one having exited the market, and that's Hard Rock Bet. They have a 6.75% tax rate on sports wagering net receipts. In addition, operators must submit 0.75% of gross gaming revenue for charitable causes, 0.5% to charitable causes. They've experienced first year-over-year revenue decline from FY 2022 to FY 2023. In FY 22, they had $2.45 billion wagered. FY 23, they had $2.47 billion wagered. Tax revenue, however, still increased from $3 million, from about $9.4 million to about $12.3 million. In terms of items for the legislature to consider if it were to move forward with mobile online sports betting, what forms of sports betting to permit or prohibit, what types of sports betting will be permitted or prohibited in statute, what will be deferred to the Mississippi Gaming Commission to authorize or prohibit in regulations. So examples of items that have been prohibited in other states include betting related to referees, betting related to injuries, or certain types of prop bets related to college athletes. What shall be the tax rate for retail sports betting and online sports betting, how the state might tax sports betting, whether based on handle, revenue, or some combination of, whether to have a local tax. Right now, only Mississippi and Pennsylvania have a local tax. Maintain the existing tax rate or establish a separate tax rate for sports betting, and whether or not to establish a separate tax rate for retail versus mobile sports betting. And then what licensing fees shall be required to operate a sports book? Will there be a separate sports book license? Will there be a separate restriction or cap on the number of license? And would there be a restriction on who could obtain a sports book license? And if there were online sports books, would they have to be tailored to a existing casino to have a sports book license? Registration requirements, would we require in-person versus online registration requirements? And can bettors register online, or will they be required to register in person through MEDC or an MEDC's licensed site? And then other areas would include marketing or promotion restrictions, limitations to curb problem gaming, and use of official or unofficial league data. That's really come up with whether or not the state would require casinos to use MLB, NBA, or NCAA official data to determine the outcome of bets, or whether or not they would leave that up to casinos to determine the outcome, what data source they use to determine those bets, and how they might make that information public. And then finally, reports in other states, just a give y'all a list of prior states that have done similar type reports. Indiana in 2018 contracted with Eilers and Krejcik Gaming to do a report. Virginia in 2019, Joint Legislative Audit and Review Commission, JLARC, did a report. North Carolina and New York both utilized Spectra Gaming Group to do reports. And then Vermont in 2021 also issued a report. And as I mentioned, Maryland just recently issued a report pertaining to online gaming. That concludes my briefing. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Do any members have any questions for him?
I actually did have one question. Thank you, Matthew, for the report. The numbers in Louisiana, I wanted to ask you about the tax rate. You've got the launched online sports betting August 2022 to July 2023, $38 million in taxes. Are there parishes that are excluded in Louisiana?
I do not know, but I can go check.
Okay.
I believe from the last meeting there are parishes that don't have.
I think we saw that on the slide,
Mhm.
and GeoComply was demonstrating its technology. So that does not include all the parishes in Louisiana. That revenue is being generated from part of the state.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I have
Go
a
ahead, Don.
couple of questions, and so I'm new to this peer report process. This is just kind of an overview of what you just covered so far. Will the peer report include additional information to this as well, or?
Yes, the peer report has not been completed. And the peer draft, we'll do a draft for them. They'll have a chance to review it and
Okay.
suggest anything that they won't go, and then it'll go back to them. And then they'll ultimately determine which they want to approve in the report. But the co-chairs have final determination of the report.
Okay, great. There's just a few things, I think, and this is well done, and the information is, I'm sure, all accurate, but there's some important pieces to this equation that I think are not captured, at least in what you presented today, and it has to do with problem gaming. Is a big piece of this. I think there's some additional studies out there. You mentioned some reports from other jurisdictions. I'd encourage you to take a look at Pennsylvania, University of Pennsylvania study on the impacts of online gaming in that state, as well as Rutgers in New Jersey. And I've got some articles here I can share with you. Just the problem with online gaming is the accessibility and the convenience and playing on a credit card. And what we've seen in states like New Jersey, where it's 3 times as prevalent for somebody to have a compulsive gaming problem related to online gaming. Similarly, in Pennsylvania, over 100% increase in problem gaming, and Michigan saw a 300% increase in their calls related to online gaming from problem gaming. And so I think those stats need to be included just the same as we're talking about the tax impacts of this. And you mentioned, although I didn't see it in here, we certainly, if we're going to move forward with this, which I think is still should be very debatable, but and Ron, I think, brought this up in the very first meeting about not just what we should be gaming on in terms of college athletics, but also how do we protect our student athletes. And I mean, just as recently as September of this year, the president of the NCAA was basically pleading for help from anybody to help protect their student athletes from the harassment and the pressure that they're getting and the barrage of advertising. So would love to see those items included in this peer report, and happy to give you some reports you can look to for the stats on that. The study that USM did, the white paper, covers a lot of that as well.
Let me say, as far as the peer report is concerned, a peer committee, for those of y'all who don't know, is a committee that works for the legislature. So if anybody has anything that they would like the peer committee to look at, run that through Chairman Uri or through me, and we will communicate to the peer committee. You have, as I said, the opportunity to write a brief letter on your letterhead that says whatever you want to say, but the peer committee works for the legislature, and so Matthew does not feel like he's going to be chased around by a dozen different people. If you have something that you would like Peer to look at, run it through Chairman Uri or myself. We will communicate with Peer staff, and then you can put in your letter whatever you want to say.
No, I appreciate the clarification on the process. We'll make sure we get you all that information.
Sure. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? All right, thank you very much, Matthew, for your work. All right, at this time, we'll move into our roundtable discussion. I've got a couple questions. I know Representative McKnight has some. I'm sure Senator Thompson and Senator Blunt have some. My first one, Jay, is going back to what Don said, the consumer protection. Can you give me your thoughts, you being the Executive Director of the Gaming Commission, and just tell me your thoughts, and if we move forward on this bill, what it should look like?
Yes, consumer protection as well as problem gambling are two issues I think we've got to address. The best way to address them, I don't have the answer to that, but I do think the bill, we should at least acknowledge that we are expanding the areas of our state where people haven't had maybe the access before. Whether the bill wants to be very specific in how that's handled, there are means, right now, I'll just put it this way. Our sports betting on property, every property has to have internal controls about how to maintain integrity, how to monitor integrity. Right now, most of the casinos police that on property. If they detect something, they're to report it to us. And when I mean something, I mean a game, maybe something that looks unusual. You have people coming in and betting large amounts on a game that's not usually wagered on. They have an individual who maybe is suddenly increasing his bets above his limits. So it's kind of self-policed right now, and I'll say since 2018, that's been the model. So we could continue with that. Tell the operators, you've got to have something in place that you alert us, because we're not the expert. You're the ones that see this every day. But we could go a step beyond that and say, in addition to what you do, we're going to look at other, third party, what other states do. So I'll just say this, Chairman, I think it's important for us to consider, and I think that's part of what we should get out of this, is ask the operators, ask other states, what's the best way to take care of this? Because the one thing about sports wagering is we have no control over the game. We have no control over, and you hear a lot of that in sports betting. The games are fixed. You can't really. The only way you can give the public confidence is that you're doing everything on property to make sure we're only going to allow wagering on games that we feel are fair. And if we have any indication that it's not fair, we're going to shut it down, and we can do that immediately. And I think we have the means to do that right now. And I think these companies companies like DraftKings that do it in different states, they do it in different ways in different states, and could probably speak a little better about the best way to handle it. But I'll just end with saying I think it's certainly a consideration that whether y'all decide to put it in the bill or not, I think it's an important consideration.
Okay. You have any idea the financial burden that it would put on each casino to hire these companies to come in? And
I really don't, because it really probably just depends on. I really couldn't put a number to it. I think if you looked at whether it was a zero sum, whether it would, we're not going to get engaged because it's going to cost too much, I don't think it would be that level. I think it's certainly something where if there was a third party, I think it would be what kind of competition. Do we have several vendors that handle this? They're gonna give rates that are reasonable. If you have only a one-stop shop or something like that, it certainly would cost more. But I think at the end of the day, I don't think it would make it unbearable. But I really haven't dug into, none of our operators that I'm aware of in other states have to do that. Maybe Jonathan or some of the DraftKings can speak to that a little better. But sitting right here, I don't have any information that would say it would be an unbearable undertaking.
Okay. All right. Kevin, did you have something?
Is my microphone on? Yeah. So quickly on integrity monitoring, I think what Executive Director McDaniel was talking about is how this works. In most states, there's a requirement that sports wagering operators report and investigate unusual sports wagering activity. And if we believe that there's a chance it could become another defined term, which is suspicious sports wagering activity, we have a third party that we anonymize the data and share it with and push it out, and then those alerts go to the other sports wagering operators in that state and in the country. So we can do an analysis on if something looks off on a market to help determine if there may be an integrity concern. So you can see that the more operators that are plugged into this market across the country, it gives a better picture over whether there could be something suspicious happening that could be an integrity-related event. So for example, how some of the original sports wagering scandals were ultimately uncovered, and this was in a retail environment, was the UNLV one, I believe it was, college kids over 21 coming in and placing bets wearing UNLV gear against UNLV. And everyone's like, what the heck is going on? This doesn't seem right, right? The regulated operators noticed something was off. They figured it out, they talked to each other, and that's how those scandals have been uncovered. Sports wagering looks different in a lot of states right now than how that one was uncovered, but we are working together as an industry because at the end of the day, if there's a belief that the sporting events that we are offering on our products don't have integrity and are fixed, people aren't going to want to use our products. They're not going to want to wager on those events. So I think that, we have a really vested interest in doing what we can to make sure that sports integrity remains as strong as it can.
Okay, thank you.
When all this started, I thought we were debating on, who was going to win the football game on Saturday or who would cover their spread on Saturday. And, whether you thought, a lot of people were watching the Alabama-Auburn game wondering if that last interception was going to count or not. But what I have learned through this is that there are lots of additional things to bet on besides the outcome of the game. I think one of our speakers at the last meeting said, they really, their job is to encourage multiple bets throughout the duration of the game. Does anybody have any thought? And that's what concerns me, to be quite frank. Betting on the outcome of a game is one thing. Betting on multiple things within the game, I think, poses certain risk to the customer. Does anybody have any thoughts on how to approach that? I don't know the answer to this, but it's something that I've been thinking about. Does anybody have any thoughts on what should be, what people can bet on? I think we all just think about football here in Mississippi, but are there other things? Should we limit that in any way? And then what type of bets should be allowed? And it's just infinite, the number of bets that can be generated through prop bets or other occurrences. And I just would like to just throw that out there for discussion and hear from anybody on the task force what they think about that.
Yeah, I'll chime in on that. I believe it's important to give the patron choice in what they want to do. And the fact of the matter is that technology has evolved so much so, even in our bricks and mortar operation, that those markets exist today. So the number of options for folks to place a wager on at the kiosk and in the properties that have mobile app on premise, it's the same as what exists in states that have statewide mobile betting. So at Caesars, we've invested in our technology stack. We have this Liberty platform. It's contributed to significant growth of our bricks and mortar business because the customers have the choice of what they want to bet on. We want to monitor that. So back to the earlier comments about responsible gaming and game integrity, I think the Gaming Commission does a great job on the integrity piece and making sure that, we're only offering markets that, that meet its criteria. But from a responsible gaming standpoint, when we can see what folks are doing on the app, it's tied to a specific person. In today's environment, they're coming up to the kiosk betting with cash. We obviously have surveillance and we have our policies and procedures. We've caught folks doing things that they shouldn't be doing. But we feel more comfortable when they bet on the app because it's tied to a specific person. We can intervene if we see a problem. If we see some behavior that looks like it's problematic, we can intervene on behalf of that customer. So again, it goes back to choice. That's out there. That exists today. If you walk up to one of my kiosks at Harrah's Gulf Coast in Biloxi, you'll see pages and pages and pages of options And, folks enjoy that, and that's where the industry is going.
Thank you. I'd like to weigh in on that as well. I think for us, the issue is less, what are the options available to wager on? And we're not against sports betting, but I find it interesting, the examples that you gave, you caught these because the people were in the casino. And while you know who's betting on a particular, you know whose account a wager is coming in from, you don't know who's using that account. And unless you're going to use facial recognition or some other really specific way to verify, we know when somebody walks in our casino, we can tell if they're underage. You don't know that when you're playing online, and that's what happened in Iowa when you had all the student athletes who were betting on their siblings and their parents' accounts, and they were underage. So I don't think it's as cut and dry and clean to protect, from a problem gaming standpoint and underage gaming standpoint, because you just don't have that direct verification.
Are there any states that limit the amount or type of transactions? And I would get Ron to specifically talk about college athletics, but are there any states that limit the type or quantity or combinations of things you can bet on in a sporting event out there? And I understand that some of you may think that's not a good idea, but are there any states that do that? And Ron, let's start with you about college athletes specifically, because that's your area of expertise, but if anybody else has anything on that question, I'd like to hear it.
Thank you, Chairman Bob. I went through a number of states and looked at regulations. Oregon is sort of an outlier. It doesn't allow any betting on college sports. There are about a dozen states that don't allow betting on in-state schools or games that are played within that state. A couple of them make exceptions for if you're in a tournament. I think that's for the NCAA tournament for schools, and they let you do that. But a number of states, Colorado, Iowa, New York, Pennsylvania, South Dakota, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, prohibit player props, which we have an agreement with the Mississippi Gaming Commission not to authorize those. So look, our statute wouldn't show up that way, but we also do not currently have props on individual student athletes. Indiana has a prohibition on in-play betting, so once the game begins, you don't have all of the props that might come up. Someone gonna get a first down or whatever. In-state college prop player betting is banned in Illinois, not out of state. So they cut it up a lot of that way, but there are a lot of different variations that are designed to limit that, which is also designed in large part to protect student athletes, but also the people who have the greatest problem with this gambling are basically college-age men, from 21 to 30 or whatever in that range. And these I'm not sure that any of them will work in Mississippi or be the right thing for Mississippi, but if we go that way, I think looking at all of these is important to form the background for legislation.
Let me say this. Right now in Mississippi, we have sports betting. So in my opinion, and y'all give me your input, if we go to a mobile sports betting, it would be the same bets that you can place in the casino currently.
In fact, I'm sorry to interrupt, but where it's different is you place a bet before a game at a casino and you watch the game. You got this on your phone, and now you're betting. You can bet play by play. All kinds of prop bets along the way. So that's why it becomes much more dangerous.
But we do have prop bets in the properties. It is more
And in-game wagering as well.
But it's not there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, but just to the chairman's question, if you just said right now, it would be the same wagers. We basically, the gaming commission, because we don't have a statute that limits it, we do. And basically, as long as it is part of that event, a quarterback throwing for so many yards or a field goal being made, if it's part of the event, it's okay to wager on it. And We have a partner. It's basically a free partnership and integrity monitoring. And there are times when they send us alerts that we have some information that this particular game, we've seen suspicious wagering. And when we see that, we send it to our operators. And typically, if it's clear cut, we've got a problem, we'll suspend all wagering, we, the commission. But we might just pass the information along if you want to suspend wagering on that. Since we've had sports betting, that has happened very few times. But it is something that we've got to, again, as we expand it and more wagers are offered, we'll have to up our monitoring. We as the Gaming Commission will just need to be more on top of things because you're going to have more people out there. But at the end of the day, what we're doing right now, I think can be done. To go to your question, it's just, you're just expanding it. But to Ron's point, it's also, you're going to have more people doing that haven't done it before. They're going to be able to do it quicker and faster. So again, it might be baby steps. There might be things that we have to put in regulation that we can't put in statute that maybe we say, all right, let's pull back on this issue, or, we can adjust as a commission if we need to. And if we get any kind of directive that something's not working, we can certainly adjust as we move forward.
You asked about the number of bets. Our average...
Get your mic a little closer.
Yeah, our average our average customer makes about 9 in-game bets per month. So it's not a huge volume. It's what they've chosen to do, and it's about 9 per month.
This is at your on-site land base?
This is mobile.
In other states?
Through Caesars Digital, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jay. Representative McKnight, did you have something?
I was curious, does anybody else have stats? Like he said 9 a month. Does anybody else have any stats on what's happening in their casinos?
I don't have them on me, but I can certainly get them for you. I think I have the stat for like the average wager of an in-game bet. I'd have to find it. But I mean, I have that. We can provide it to you. And I just wanted to make a comment to follow up on the consumer protection issues. And, what we've heard is that, we can address these things systematically through internal controls, through the prudent and reasonable operation of an online sports book. But I think we all should be a little bit more mindful, and maybe our friend from DraftKings can provide some testimony around when those things don't go right, and the failures and the violations and really the societal harm that is caused when there is a failure. So we can look around we can look right at our neighbors in Louisiana and see some of the fines that they have handed down, and up the river in Ohio and over to Maryland, and on and on and on, for violations like accepting wagers from customers outside the state. That's a GeoComply failure, right? We've heard a lot from GeoComply. I've worked with them myself in the past. Very reputable and reasonable company. Certainly they're doing their best. But we need to recognize that there's failures that happen, right? And those failures cause harm. And allowing self-excluded guests to gamble, right? Those failures happen. And we have more harm that results. And allowing or targeting customers, in fact, under the age of 21, right? We saw a barrage of those kind of fines happening out of Ohio here recently. And so I just want there to be some awareness and realization that while these are well-intentioned and well-designed systems and people that are operating those systems, it's a common occurrence for those systems to fail. And the result of those failures can cause serious societal harms. And those harms are not the same that you find in a brick and mortar establishment. And while we have self-excluded people that breach their period of self-exclusion periodically, and while we have young people under the age of 21 periodically try to sneak into a casino, We typically fine them before any harm is caused. And we exclude them physically, right? And I don't know that the same is present on an online platform. So I just want us to talk a little bit about that and those consumer protections.
Could I respond to that? I think she specifically asked me to answer some things related to that. I can't disagree with what you've said. There have been failures. We have gotten fined in different jurisdictions. We have to go in front of those gaming commissions. We have to talk about what happened. We have to talk about what we can do and the systems and the processes and the protocols that we have put into place to try to make sure the same mistake does not happen again. I don't think I'm qualified to discuss the societal norms or societal harm here, but I do want to point out that every industry that is regulated has violations. And I realize that what we're dealing with is definitely a sensitive area, but I also want to make it very clear, and I feel like some of the questions that are being addressed toward me are saying that we are intending, if there's a violation, to advertise toward minors or something like that. That is the last thing that we want to occur. We have strong compliance programs. We're continually working on them. I'm on internal task force within our company to try to improve our compliance measures. So we really do appreciate the question, and we do understand the burden, the responsibility that we have with being a gaming licensee for mobile sports wagering.
I've got a question for you, Kathy. Y'all represent, or y'all are present in Kentucky, right?
Yes.
And Kentucky is the latest state that just went on. So my question to you is, y'all are doing mobile in Kentucky, correct?
Not directly, no.
Y'all aren't partnered, or?
We have a partner, right?
So I guess my question would be, why is it good for your company in Kentucky, but y'all oppose it in Mississippi?
I think it's hard to say that Mississippi is Kentucky or Kentucky is Mississippi, right? Every jurisdiction has its own personality. And what's happening in Mississippi is just very different from Kentucky. And gambling has always been a states' rights issue. And in particular, you will find dramatic differences in law and regulation from one state to the next. And you have operators that operate in both states, yet the regulatory set and the regulatory environment could be completely and dramatically different. And that's the case here, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you.
Is Kentucky the last state to pass mobile sports betting?
I think the most recent to go live is Maine, but I'm not sure when all that legislation was passed. There's usually some lag period from the time of legal authorization and the time of go live.
And Chairman said y'all are a partnership in Kentucky. What do you think they got right, and what do you think they got wrong?
I think you could cherry pick good things from every state. I think that Massachusetts has some significant and very, very strong restrictions on advertising and the protection of collegiate athletes. I think the state of Ohio does a lot to protect minors and has some really strong regulations around that topic. Not to say that they don't have strong regulations around others, but I think theirs is kind of the gold standard in that regard on that subject. And you could go around the entire United States to all 34, I think he said, states that have adopted some form of sports betting, and find some regulations that are better than others. Typically the ones that have passed more recently have learned a lot of lessons from the ones who came before them.
I think we're all aligned as a committee as a whole on not advertising to people under 21 and taking precautions in college campuses and different at-risk persons and things of that nature. As far as the verification goes, Don, you pointed out Iowa had kind of got it wrong. Do you know of any states that that get it right continuously?
I'm not aware. I think that there's an inherent issue with online gaming that we seem to be just kind of skirting over. And that is that it is a product very different than our bricks and mortar casino. And this goes back to the very first meeting when, I stated in my opening comments what made gaming work for Mississippi was the focus on bringing in jobs to the state, bringing in capital to the state, bringing in outside dollars and tourism to the state. Online gaming does none of that. There's no capital that's going to be brought in. There's no jobs that are going to be brought in, and
There's
all
no
of
capital?
the money. No, there's no. Well, maybe there's going to be a couple of servers that get installed in the state somewhere, but there's no real brick and mortar capital that's going to get invested. There's going to be plenty of advertising. Hundreds of millions of dollars will probably be spent in advertising, which is why there are 4 operators that control 90% of the online market. But online gaming in its just pure state inherently is much more riskier than having to get up, get dressed, go to the casino, be somewhere much more limited in terms of its access. Having a casino in your hand 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, the ability to play on a credit card, as we've seen in several other states, significantly increases problem gaming and underage gaming. And that's the inherent problem that we have with this product.
Let me ask you this. I had a visitor over the holidays, comes from a mobile sports gaming state. And when he got here, of course, he started to try to place bets, and then it kind of set in that, you're not going to be able to do that. I observed him over the next 3 days continuously try to somehow or another place a bet. What is the future? Where does Mississippi fall out in that area if we don't get on board with mobile sports
I think
betting?
we'll be protecting particularly the young men in our state from the ages of 25 to 35.
Okay, what about the people, we'll just use some random state. We'll use Kentucky, for example. They've been talked about enough. We'll keep talking about Kentucky. You have a wedding party that wants to come to Kentucky, Mississippi for a bachelor party. They're not coming. Does that affect tourism?
I really don't think somebody's going to decide whether or not they have their wedding party here based on whether or not they can game online for sports betting.
If they could go to Louisiana and on Saturday go charter boat fishing and make sports bets, or they go to Louisiana and golf on Sunday and make bets, would they go to Mississippi or would they go to Louisiana?
I mean, that's such a hypothetical, I couldn't answer the question. There's a lot of
I understand
there. I think when you're on a fishing trip, you're going to make a decision based on where you're getting the best fish. So, I appreciate the hypotheticals. I think the reality is there may be a very small piece of gaming on online that people happen to be in the state and play online, but make no mistake about it, this product is geared towards Mississippians. You're going to be getting the vast majority of your play, 90%, I don't know what the stats are, but it's going to come from in-state customers. And that money, I think the Choctaw representative had exactly right, is going to go outside of the state except for the tax dollars. Because 90% of this is controlled by very large corporations that are not based here in Mississippi.
I think part of, if I may jump in, part of the revenue is going to go to illegal offshore operators. I did a Google Trends search in preparation for this meeting over the past 3 or 4 months. Bovada is one of the biggest online gaming operators that operates with no regulation. I believe Executive Director McDaniel has said they've sent cease and desist to all these different operators to try to get them to stop taking Mississippians as customers. Bovada was continually outperforming Google searches for DraftKings, and we are a regulated fantasy sports provider in the state as well. So people in Mississippi are searching for and finding the term Bovada. The data is clear there. So to say that just because someone can't place a regulated sports wager on their phone means they're not going to place a wager, I just don't believe that either. I think that's naive to some degree. So
And I don't believe I said that.
you did. Sorry.
Yeah.
I was making that conclusion.
Yeah, no. I do think it's a little ironic that we're sitting here talking about solving a problem of online gaming that really doesn't exist in the state. But we're going to create it, and then we're going to throw out all these solutions to deal with the problems that get created. If online gaming is illegal in the state now, legalizing it is not going to provide any more authorization to the authorities to be able to go in and crack down on the illegal online gaming. If it's illegal, then go after the illegal online activity and crack down on it now. You don't have to legalize gaming to do that.
I think looking at some of the jurisdictions that have legalized sports wagering, I just don't agree with you from that perspective. If you look at New Jersey, for example, in New York, some of the bigger illegal operators have pulled out of the market because they're seeing their players going to the legal market. It's not worth their time, it's not worth the risk to their business to continue operating illegally in the state when players are turning to the regulated option.
Well,
Let me,
that may very well be the case, but I think the reality is this is not about let's really crack down on illegal gaming. This is about let's open up a new revenue stream and a new market for the businesses that are focused on online gaming. And let's make no mistake about it. I know the discussion, and I appreciate your comments, Mr. Chairman, right at the beginning. This is about online sports betting. It's really not. This is about online gaming. Our representative that came and spoke to us from West Virginia, they talked about online sports betting. The very next year, they passed full online gaming. These companies don't make any money on online sports betting. This is about getting the nose of the camel under the tent to then force its way into the full online game, because that's where the real money is for these companies.
Senator Thompson, I believe you had a question.
At the risk of having it answered, I've just been keeping a running list of sort of different topics, issues, areas of concern that have come up through our meetings. One of the things, and I think Don, you just touched on it a minute ago. If you go into a casino and place a bet, you have to bet cash, right? We do the same thing with the lottery. You have to play you have to pay with cash. The idea of guys being able to use credit cards to wager gives me a great deal of pause. Are there any states that limit credit card transactions, make them use ACH transactions or anything else? Is there a way that they can't use a credit card to place an online bet?
I'm not aware of that, but you do know we do credit card cash advances in the casino, and we also offer credit to our guests, in-house credit.
Right, those are things that you're regulating guest by guest. It's not a you wouldn't lend me money probably.
No, we certainly have stringent processes on who we lend to and what their lines are, and we investigate all that. But we do offer cash advances on credit cards, and so that's a way to gamble in our establishments using a form of credit. There are multiple forms of credit.
And the concern I have is...
I didn't answer your question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, I don't know the answer to the question of are there states that have mobile sports betting and don't allow credit cards. We could find that out.
So for example, Tennessee, just up north, my geography is terrible. They don't allow credit cards. So when they passed legislation, they prohibited the use of credit cards for mobile sports wagering. So on our app, there is not the ability to use a credit card to deposit.
So how do they credit their account?
You can use other approved methods. So for example, you could use methods that people use to pay for things all over the place. You can use a debit card, for example. You could use PayPal, for example, but you couldn't use... It's sophisticated enough to know that your PayPal deposit is not linked to a credit account. It would be linked to like a debit account, so you're not sort of wagering on credit in that regard. So it's other popular payment methods that people use to do anything else, any other form of online entertainment. But yeah, there is specifically a prohibition on credit cards being used to fund accounts in Tennessee and other states across the country.
Is Tennessee the only state that prohibits credit card transactions on your app?
No, I will for sure butcher the list off the top of my head, but I know for sure that I think it's Iowa and I believe Massachusetts or other states that do not allow the use of credit cards for deposits.
So it's only debit card transactions?
It would only be debit card transactions. And for example, in the sheet that we all pulled together, we all worked on, there was something about potentially licensing payment processors. So they have the regulations as well, and they'll recognize that if a card is being used, the payment processors know that they have to be blocking and not allowing credit cards. So it could only be debit cards being used. So there is like sophisticated technology that I unfortunately can't explain in detail, but I can tell you that we have a process in place to prohibit those types of transactions in the jurisdictions where the policy has been dictated that credit is not to be used to fund mobile sports wagering accounts.
Are there instances where people you can buy those debit cards at the checkout line at Walmart? Or is there a way to source whether or not that guy went and bought a $100 debit card with his credit card and then used that debit card on the app?
There is. There absolutely is. And we have processes in place for every type of deposit method that we have, and we have to think about all of the edge cases. So for example, what you laid out is an edge case that we need to make sure that, for example, convenience stores, if that's where you're going to be purchasing those prepaid pieces, you cannot be used to use a credit card. DraftKings has gift cards, for example. It's the same exact thing. We can't have gift cards being bought with credit cards for that very reason. And we work with convenience stores and other places where we sell them to make sure that that does not happen.
Gotcha. And then the one point that Chairman brought up, typically your sports gamblers, the guys who can really handicap, the guys who can really make a parlay sheet, that's handicapping. That's a skill game. Would you agree with that? No.
I think there's levels of skill involved in handicapping for sure.
And then my concern is that the sort of prop bets things that we're talking about, the in-game bets, those are not so much skill as they are kind of games of chance.
I think sports wagering in general is a game of chance. I mean, I could give you lots of anecdotes about people who knew what was going to happen and they were dead wrong, and some who thought they were wrong and were dead right. I mean,
I think I don't disagree with you, but I do think that for the most part, someone wagering on a sports game or a series of sports games, there's a certain skill to that. Start introducing prop bets, particularly in-game prop bets. You can see when somebody's parlay is falling apart, and you start offering them lifelines to try to save it. Those are things that, those sort of prop bets, those sort of chance bets are things that I think are just something that we need to stay aware of as we're going through this.
yeah. I mean, again, we offer a lot lot of that stuff today through our kiosk. And there's definitely bettors who want to get back on the Pac-12 game at the end of the day. I mean, there's certainly betting patterns, and to your point about skill, I mean, we all have trading departments, and we have folks that are monitoring, who's betting what, and that's how we move the line. That's how we change the price based on what the market is doing. So yeah, I mean, it's a combination of those two things, but at the end of the day, that's the business that we're in.
Sure.
It's gambling and it's entertainment, and people enjoy it. And we take responsible gaming very seriously through all forms of sports betting that we offer as Caesars, whether it be bricks and mortar or through our digital app.
Yeah, I think that's true for all the operators.
Mike, can I ask a question on that subject real quick before you move on?
I'm done.
Okay. Are there any states that accept prop bets in the casino but don't on the mobile app? In other words, are there any states that you know of that have a different set of rules for online than they do on site?
I'm not aware of any off the top of my head. Typically, it's all, whether it's retail or online, but I'll check just to verify that, but I'm not aware of any.
There is one jurisdiction that I can think of. The state of Illinois passed a restriction on in-state colleges and universities, so placing wagers. But they have renewed a pilot program for the second year where you can actually place wagers on in-state colleges and universities, but only at the brick and mortar facilities. That's the only distinction that I can think of off the top of my head where retail and mobile wagers are treated differently.
That's probably to protect the athletes coming in.
I think that there's more regulation, at least that I've seen, around a requirement to use league data on prop bets and in-game wagering versus single game outcome bets where there's not, or there's less regulation around that because that's readily available and usually reliable.
I have a question that, just to throw out to the task force, and anybody wants to address it, but welcome. If you are a mobile, if you're a DraftKings or a FanDuel, a mobile operator, would you want a single relationship? And I think that we all agree that if we are to have a bill, that the app has to have some relationship with a licensed, Mississippi licensed casino. Would you want to have just one, empower your app on that one contractual relationship, or multiple, or why or why not? If you are a casino, would you want to have the ability to partner with one app, and would that be enough for you, or would you want to have multiple relationships with multiple apps, and why or why not? So from either perspective, if you're in the, and I'm calling it an app, but if you're a FanDuel, why would you want to have a relationship with one or more casinos or not? And if you're a casino, why would you want to have that? And just help me think about that issue and the questions that it raises for each of you in your individual capacities.
I'll go first. It's probably easiest for me because we're both. So we've got the Caesars app and we're bricks and mortar. We've got 4 properties in the state. So we're proud of our mobile platform. We're proud of the way we've launched it and the way it's growing. And we're proud of competing with, all the other apps, including DraftKings sitting next to me. So we wouldn't consider using any other one.
You'd have your 4 properties, you got your one app, you're good to go.
It's easy. Now, the first part of your question is, I don't work for Caesars Digital, but I know that we have partners in multiple states. We have partners with other casinos. We have had partners within the state of Mississippi previously, and we would be open to working with anyone to offer mobile sports betting tethered back to their bricks and mortar casino. And I wouldn't, as an operator in Biloxi, I wouldn't have a problem with that. If somebody wanted to use our app, I wouldn't have any issue with that.
Anybody, what about our other independent operators? Any thoughts on that question?
Well, the customer database, that's really where it comes down to, is who owns the customer database. So DraftKings and FanDuel, through Daily Fantasy Sports, back in 2017, started building a customer database many years ago, and they have a huge customer database. So if we were to partner with DraftKings, FanDuel, for example, it would not be our customer. It would be their customer. And the reason they would partner with us is so that they could legally engage in that conduct or that activity in our state because of the requirement. But we would get a very, very small portion of the revenue in it. So we wouldn't really be operating it. And I know Jay said we're responsible for it, and I think we are. The way that things have been handled through the sportsbook retail, if there's a mistake made, we're called up to the Gaming Commission to answer for it. And I assume the same would happen if something happened online and somebody who's underage or a self-excluded person used the app and they were somehow affiliated with our property, we'd be coming up for a show cause and trying to explain why the app did that, and I don't think we'd know. But that's the main difference. Do you have your own database? Can you build it up? That's the question you have to ask yourself. And the smaller operators, you got to invest a lot of money. You got to start from scratch. These are your customers, and that takes a lot of development, a lot of expense. And then you're competing with the acquisition cost. And so you've got Wynn Resorts, who had shut down in 8 states their online gaming app recently because they can't compete. They cannot compete. It's so expensive to offer somebody $200 of free play if you come and bet $5. Well, at the end of the day, they're not making any money. And so they decided from a business standpoint to shut down. So that's kind of what you're facing in the online world. You're either going to take a small percentage, and it's not your customer, or you're going to try to compete, and it's very difficult.
Don, anything to add on that?
Yeah, I would just reiterate Mike's comments. I agree with that. Generally, that this idea of multiple skins is really kind of a red herring. I mean, we saw the stats in one of the reports earlier. There are 4 companies that control 90% of the online gaming. So I don't care if you have 50 skins in the state, there's going to end up being 4 companies, and that's because, to Mike's point, they've got the database, they've got the acquisition cost in a position to handle that. Now, the way Arkansas handled it, very differently, and I think that at least gave the brick and mortar operators the chance to really leverage off of their existing database and keep those customers. But kind of to Kathy's point about Mississippi being very different than Kentucky, and we've had gaming here for almost 30 years. When did they get brick and mortar casinos in Kentucky? 3-4 years ago? I mean, it's just a very different.
Arguably, they're not really casinos.
Right, arguably, they really still don't have them. If we legalize online sports betting here, clearly through my comments, we're opposed to it. We will be forced to engage in it from a competitive standpoint. And we'll have to offer that product to our customers. And I think that's kind of a little bit of the situation that you've been in Kentucky. You have to operate because that's what the product is there. And here you are in this state saying, yeah, but we don't want it here. And so that's the difference, I think, that you're seeing. And we'll have an operator. We've got somebody that we would work with. And the reality is we'll be fighting with the other dozen operators in the state for the minuscule 10% of whatever that market is that was going to be available to us.
And meanwhile, lose 90% of your retail.
Correct.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And to go back just to your original question, Mr. Chairman, as I understood it, DraftKings only needs one
Right.
app, right? They only need one website.
That if 2 companies or 4 companies have 90% of the market, why don't they go to 4 casinos, sign that agreement, and rock and roll?
I believe that's exactly what will happen.
Okay.
Kevin,
Hasn't already.
so just to use an example, if Treasure Bay or Island View or a casino in Tunica contacts y'all, are y'all open to partner with them? Are you just only going to partner with one or two? Who you're partnered with? Are you at Scarlet Pearl right now?
I don't believe that we actually have a current partner in
That's
the state.
DraftKings.
I believe that DraftKings' deal expired, and we are currently looking at options to re-enter the state for retail sports wagering. But the answer is probably yes and probably no as well. We're always looking at deals that make the most sense for us from a market access perspective. If a partner has a location or their core casino customer base or something like that we think aligns with what we would like to be doing as a business as it relates to sports wagering, that's always an attractive conversation that our business team is willing to have and will have. It's not very often that we don't have a conversation. I also don't know the extent of any of the contracts that we have. We do have some national partnerships that grant us access to certain markets. I think one of them is with Penn Gaming. We announced one in like 2018 or 2019 where we had market access. So I don't know off the top of my head. I do know that our business team loves an opportunity to grow our brand, grow our presence, and make an impact in the state. And like, for example, some of that would be in a state like Tennessee where we can't even offer a retail property because it's prohibited by law. We've gone in and we've created a restaurant, a bar and restaurant, with, I think it's with a casino operator, I can't remember which one. But essentially, it doesn't have any gaming, but we want to increase our footprint in that state because it just was the right deal for us at the time, and there's no gaming tied to that. So we're certainly open to having conversations whenever they come about. I just unfortunately am not the correct person to tell you exactly how those work.
I guess my last question or last statement, I'm looking at this, I guess they polled 20 of the casinos responded. And one of the main things we talked about was remote versus in-person. And I see Out of the 20, 19 now say that remote is what they would like to see, with one saying in person. Any discussion on that? Any thoughts? Jonathan, you want to speak to that?
I would. So what you're referring to is the refresh of the poll for the 26 casinos in the state, where 19 responded that they were in favor of statewide mobile sports betting. And then, so the inference there is that there are 7 opposed. And then within the 19 who responded, all 19 said,
Well, 20 responded.
20 responded, 1 said
remote.
opposed. The other 6 who didn't responded were, the inference being that they're opposed. Yeah, I think we've gone kind of back and forth on that. Caesars was originally, a couple years ago in favor of in-person registration. As we've seen other states open up, we believe that to be extra friction and not necessarily the right thing to do. The one state that does stand out a little bit is Nevada, but Nevada's got almost 400 casinos where someone could go in and register. So it's a very different type of a state, I would say, than here. We want to open up. We want to open up quickly. We know that Bovado and other illegal operators have been doing this in our state, in our backyard for years. And so that would be our preference.
Well, I guess a couple comments. There are 16 ownership groups, according to the peer report. And so I would assume then there are 11 or 10 of those ownership groups in favor and 6 opposed. So I know you can count each property, but they're going to vote together. So essentially what you've got here is 10 versus 6, if I'm doing the math right. The other observation is regarding New Jersey, or not New Jersey, but Nevada. And I circled this earlier when we were going through state by state. And I noticed that, let's see, mobile sports wagering only accounts for 65% of the bets, sports bets, versus we're talking 90, 95% in states like Maryland. So they require that in-person registration. That proves statistically that you're going to keep more business at your casino if you require in-person registration. So we would be in favor of that.
Can I respond to that? I think a little bit goes back to, and Don, I respect your opinion, that you said you would be forced to do it. We would welcome the opportunity, and this just goes to a difference of opinion. We would welcome the opportunity to provide a meaningful value proposition to guests from around the state and invite them to our property in Biloxi and give them an experience. I view our market as a destination market, and Nevada, Las Vegas is certainly a destination market where activity happens on premise. It happens on site, and it's established that way. Yes, there's statewide mobile wagering, but people go to that market to engage in various forms of entertainment, gaming and non-gaming, and so that keeps the, I believe, my opinion only, that is a major reason why they get 35% of their sports betting activity. I think we will be way below the 90% mark in our state because, again, I might meet someone for the first time when they download the Caesar Sports app and sign up with us, but I'm going to work real hard to get them to come visit us in Biloxi and give them a great experience when they come there and give them all sorts of other forms of entertainment options when they're there.
But if you require an annual renewal to validate that they're 21, to validate that they're not self-excluded in Mississippi or anywhere else, and to validate that they're not currently engaged in professional or amateur sports, aren't you then requiring them to come to your property as opposed to enticing them to come to your property?
Yeah, so I'm not an expert on multi-factor verification. I've learned that term. I do know anecdotally it's easier to sign up for a bank account than it is to sign up for an account with any of our sports wagering apps. So there's a lot that goes into finding out who people are and verifying it. Can people slip through the cracks? Could they use someone else's app? I'm sure that happens. I believe, my opinion, is that those that are willing to go to those lengths are doing it currently illegally, and we have an opportunity to give people a legal means to do that, and a regulated, most importantly, means to do that.
Any other comments from any other members of the task force before we wrap things up? Okay, Mike, yes.
Sorry.
Sure. No, I asked.
If I've said too much, I can stop.
No, you're, go ahead.
There's one topic I really want to talk about. And, you know, we did a Google sheet, all the task force members, and we kind of laid out some issues and our position on those. And we did all that work ahead of time. And it's been a good process. One of the comments that I had added to the spreadsheet was this notion that, you know, a referendum, if you're going to introduce a bill, you should include some sort of legal mechanism that you publish notice in each county that this activity is being proposed to take place, and that if you give voters the option to basically say, yes, we want this, or no, we don't, and call for a referendum, essentially. That's the way the law is in Mississippi. It always has been, in every form of gaming that we have, okay? So right now, there was some pushback on that concept. And I was a little concerned that there was pushback on that because gaming is historically in Mississippi extremely limited. Right now, there's only dockside gaming in Mississippi. There's no gaming on land. It's got to be on a vessel or a cruise vessel. There's only 7 counties where gaming has been legalized through this referendum process. And if you don't have a referendum, you don't have to have one, but if you don't have one and a proposed licensee has advertised, then the Board of Supervisors in that county has to make a finding that the petition was not filed, and then they may approve gaming to take place on a cruise vessel or a vessel. Okay, so that's the mechanism we've set up in our state. If we're going to expand gaming to 82 counties and on land like that, I would think you would want to at least give voters the opportunity to say, no, not for us. Like in Louisiana, we know that we've seen it, geofenced, those 9 parishes, and they're doing fine. They're doing fine. So we would suggest that out of respect for the history of gaming in Mississippi, how limited it's been, that we at least make sure that we include that as part of any legislation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other topic that has not been brought up today that anyone member would like to bring up? I would remind you, if you have suggestions for the peer committee to research, let Chairman Uri or me know about that. If you would like to submit something that would be included as an appendix, please get that to me and Chairman Uri by the end of the week, and we'll get that to the peer committee so it will be included. Yes.
I just wanted to say I did a summary of the sheet that we all worked on throughout the past couple of weeks, and I do want to say for everyone following along that there were about 50, 60 issues put into that sheet with different recommendations. And I think the conversation we've all had today may not make it seem like we were as aligned, but if you go through the sheet itself, there are about 20 issues that we were all pretty much completely aligned on. There were probably another 10, 12 issues that there was alignment that there needed to be inclusion in a mobile sports wagering framework if the state moves forward. And then there were another set of issues, probably 10, 15 issues where there was sort of discrepancy on this. But I do appreciate everyone working with me, especially to sort of put that together, allow an opportunity for all of us to make recommendations that hopefully if the state is going to consider moving mobile sports wagering forward, we can be a participant in the start of the document and be able to help in any way as our positions are kind of out there.
I'd like to just add to that, and we appreciate the open dialogue. And as I told both the chairman when they asked us to go through this process, is a little awkward for us to help figure out how to maybe draft legislation to pass that we really don't believe should pass. And so we did it in that spirit at your request. But to be clear on the things we disagreed on, first and foremost, we don't think we should have any form of online gaming in the state. We think that the downside far exceeds the upside. The only upside we can see is that it may generate $5 or $10 million in tax revenues to the state. But beyond that, there is, as we've covered today, just a host of problem gaming, underage gaming, student athlete harassment. There's a lot of issues here that we're potentially opening up a can of worms. And the last thing I would just say, and I know Chairman Uri, you're going to bring a bill. The bill that was originally drafted that we looked at as for reference from one of the earlier meetings had language in there that could easily be interpreted to be legalizing full online gaming. And so one of our biggest concerns about moving forward with a bill in any way, shape, or form are the unintended consequences, sometimes intended unintended consequences, because these bills are drafted by very, very smart lawyers. And so we would really request that you pay extra attention to that and that drafting so that we don't have any unintended consequences. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd just like to say thank y'all for all the time and hard work, as I said earlier. I know we've all had many conversations outside these meetings, and a lot's gone into this, and they are very busy and run big properties and very successful people and have traveled long distances to be here. So I just want to thank y'all again for serving on this task force and for all of y'all's hard work. So thank y'all very much.
Thank you for the opportunity.
We're adjourned.